I don't know.
Here we are. We're live. Yay! I have this big old banner on here, and I am Jean Barry, and today is the very first in our interview series on playing in your business. Game on. Let's make it happen. And my most fabulous first guest is Dr. Elena Estanol. She is a high performance psychologist, a business strategist, an expert in intuition, and she is super, super smart. And what I found out in the last couple months, she's super, super fun. So this is what we're doing. So welcome, Dr. Elena Estanol. So glad to have you here. Do you why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business and what you do? And I'm going to take this silly thing off the screen. There we go. Now we can see you.
Sure. Well, I am a high performance psychologist and an intuitive business mentor. And basically, I just help people. The way that I think about it is like I really help people awaken to their divine purpose, to really find what is it that lights them up, and it's like what they're here to do, and really help them kind of break through all of the mental blocks that come up when we start stretching and stepping into who we are meant to be, and provide the strategy and the support for them to actually implement and, have these fun and profitable businesses. And, part of that, we talked a little bit about intuition, is that part of that is that I really help them become their own guru, right? Like
Beautiful.
Learning to really tap into their own wisdom, to figuring out which one of all of the different strategies that we could give them at any particular moment, it's going to be the right one for them.
Very cool. That is awesome. And so here's what we're going to do today. We are going to talk to Dr. Elena. We're going to hear about her business and how she does that a little more deeply, and who she works with in her business and that type of thing. We're going to talk about intuition. We're going to talk about the Angels, Peacocks, and Butterfly games. As you know, I invented a game called Angels, Peacocks, and Butterflies, 100 Days of Miracles. And we're actually going to play it today with Dr. Elena. She was actually in my beta for the game last year before we launched it. And so she plays this game in her business as well. And she's going to talk about what it is to be an angel, peacock, and butterfly, and what she is. So we're going to talk about that too. And then at the end, we have something really, really cool to offer you because, like I mentioned, we are doing a very cool partnership right now, and I'm excited to share that with you as well. So here we are. So Elena, tell us, who is it that what's the sweet spot of people that you love to serve and work with?
Like, who are my ideal people to work with?
Yeah.
I love working with, I'm going to say two different kinds of people that in like overarching, like the overarch thing is basically they are spiritual entrepreneurs or purpose-driven entrepreneurs, right? Like they know what they want to do, or at least they have a sense that they have a deeper purpose here in this world. So a lot of times I say if people they just want a business coach that's going to help them make more money, and that's the only driving force, then I'm probably not the right person. You know what I mean? So I definitely like to work with spiritual entrepreneurs, purpose-driven entrepreneurs that are here to make a bigger difference in the world. I think of them as healers or light workers. But, how we show up is in all kinds of different ways, and so I was sharing this a little bit with you and a friend of ours that in general, I work with two different types of people, and there are the people that I'm often telling them, like, okay, like, stop and think about stuff, like stop and think, then act, stop, think, then act. And then the ones that are really, really bright and very cerebral and very analytical, and that I am kind of telling them, like, stop thinking, just do it. Stop thinking, just do it. So lots of people that get stuck in what I call analysis paralysis, because they are just too much in their heads and really thinking too much from their heads and not integrating enough, like, all of the wisdom in their bodies and around them.
Right. Oh, that makes total sense. And I know that you've built a really successful business over the years. How do people really work with you? How do they get to be in your world? Like, what does that usually look like?
Sure. Well, it's fascinating. I think that people come to me in all kinds of different ways, which is it's one of the beauties of um, social media now, right? It's like they can find me through my website, and I'm happy to give it at some point
Oh, sure.
later.
We'll drop it in the link here.
Sure.
Yep.
So lots of people find me that way. Many people actually find me just through Facebook and interacting with me. And, many people, their first entry is joining my group, which is called Luminous Conscious Entrepreneurs on Facebook. And, I do work with people one-on-one. I don't take as many clients one-on-one, but I do work with people one-on-one. My favorite thing for me to do is to have people join my mastermind, because it is actually during my mastermind that they get to work with me one-on-one in a certain percentage or a certain part of our work, but then they also get to have the support and the genius of all the other people in the group. And I've been running groups for about 16 years, and so it is it's just really magical. It's really almost hard to describe, because what gets created in those groups, it's a very, very intimate cocoon-like group where people are just feeling really safe and really supported, but also stretched and bolstered to kind of go do the thing that they are meant to do. And so those are probably the biggest ways, and probably the ones that what I enjoy the most. Though I also have, a couple group programs that I run and that kind of thing. And we are now starting a class together, which I'm super, super jazzed and very excited about.
Oh, exactly. I know this. It's so fun to work in partnership with someone who's totally aligned and complements everything that I do, and then that kind of partnership is so much fun.
Totally.
And so I know that you've had some different bumps and ups and downs in your path that really led you to this spot that has you say, okay, I got this. This is why I serve these really purposeful people. This is why. And I know some of them were kind of traumatic in your world. Do you want to share a little bit about how you got here and what put you on this track?
Yeah, absolutely. I had an interview recently actually with somebody, and they said, it seems like everything is easy for you. Like, you're always happy. Everything is easy. Everything just kind of flows, like how did, so it made me think a little bit about like, okay, so that's sort of the perception, and I am a very optimistic person, which I think it's part of it. And things have not been easy, all the time. Like, there's been lots of bumps in the road. So I'll share a couple of things just because I think it's helpful. I started as a dancer, and this is kind of how you and I think, connect, because at the core of our souls, we're artists. And so I started as a dancer, and basically I went to school to major in dance performance and pedagogy. And about 4 months before graduation, I had a career-ending injury that basically ended my dance career as a performer. And so it was kind of one of my first go to the depths of despair kind of thing. Like, I've spent all my life pretty much preparing for this thing, and now it's taken away. And it for me, I have found that every time that something that we call bad happens, it's usually for one of two reasons. One is there's a lesson that we need to learn. There's an experience that we need to have so that it equip us with greater skills, greater compassion, greater something for the work that we need to do in the future. Or it is sort of a wake-up call for how we are living our lives, and that we need to make a change and do something different, So I think for me at that point, I had been struggling with an eating disorder, but I had not really acknowledged that. It wasn't really like a thing, being a dancer. It seemed like, everybody ate weird and whatever, and so it sort of made me realize like, okay, like I was actually co-creating this thing. And it was bad enough that it actually took me to a place where I like considered taking my life away. So it was like, it was really, really rough. And it was also sort of in that moment, kind of this realization that like there's this voice that I heard that was like, it is your choice, And so I had this realization of like, oh, like, so if I took my life, then that would be the end, right? Like, or I could give my life into something, right? So if I'm willing to sacrifice my life, then I might as well like give my life into something that is meaningful and contributing and of value. And so at that point, I made that decision. And so the decision was like, well, so I need to heal myself so then I can help other people that are struggling. And so that was kind of part of one of my first paths. And then I, went to school for 17 years to, understand and know and figure out all the stuff. And I built a really, really, really successful integrative wellness center. Had many other clinicians working with me, blah, blah, blah. And about 6 years ago, I had another kind of major awakening where basically I fell down and broke my leg. And then that led to basically 3 years of what I call 3 years in hell, because I spent 3 years being disabled. And I share the piece about having been a dancer because I think that going from an able body to a disabled body is a really challenging thing for anybody. But I think that, when you're a dancer, there's a piece that just, I don't know, you always kind of feel like, I have superpowers, like you just kind of feel like extra special. And it was kind of that like piece of awakening of like, there's no specialness. And now like there is like, total invisibility. And at that moment, it was an awakening moment for me to see like how I have been running my business, how I had been running my life. I was working like all the time, and there had been these little nudges along the way, but I was not listening because I was, I am gonna make this happen, damn it, kind of thing. And we can talk a little bit more about that and what that means in terms of being a peacock. But I think that then that was kind of, for me, a major thing. I mean, because it wasn't just that injury, it just kind of led to other things. I had 2 different surgeries within that time period. Mm-hmm. And what happened at that moment was that I needed to learn to wait, like to sit still. I needed to learn to listen. I got several downloads of things that I needed to do, like start sharing more broadly, like share my message, expand my reach. And I had major visibility issues that I had to kind of work through as well. Mm-hmm. So, so I'm sharing all of these things that sound like really terrible, but at the same time, it's like, these were kind of the foundation for me to realize like, okay, life needs to be different and I can do things differently. And then I can empower people to do their lives and their businesses in a different way. But at that moment, it was definitely for me, like, I need to have intuition. I need to have play. I need to have balance. And I need to be willing to have the courage to step through all of those things to really rise up to the purpose that I'm here to do.
And so do you think that then that's somewhat archetypal, like for business owners, like as they learn from what you did in that, are there like patterns within that you can then identify to then help the people that you work with to both listen to their intuition and perhaps be more aware of where they're at, what they're doing, and instead of, like you say, instead of getting sick or injured or something like that.
Absolutely. There's absolutely tons and tons of patterns to that. And, I have been obsessed. I think this is probably very true of most psychologists, I'm going to say. obsessed with basically systems that look at human behavior, right? And looking at different systems that look at human behavior from different perspectives. And I really love to contrast them to see. So I have this thing. It's kind of a race, but I think that it'll work. That I use to explain to people, and I say, like, this is the grid of like the world, and it's also our own personal grid that gets superimposed. And then each of these circles is like one perspective that lets us know ourselves. So like this is one, system, right? And then it gives us information of ourselves. And then there's like, this is another system and this is another system. Like, so what I mean by this, like, it could be like, this is the MBTI and this is like your system, like angels, peacocks, and butterflies. And then this is like human design. And this is like energetic characterologies, and this is numerology, and this is, right? And so I've been obsessed with studying a whole bunch of different systems, because of course, like, I want to understand people and see, and we are so multidimensional and multifaceted, right? And in a way, I have really loved what you created with angels, peacocks, and butterflies, because in a way, it's a very it's a simple system that can tap into some of the behavioral patterns and energetic patterns of being and how we are engaging with ourselves and engaging with the world, that I think are pretty consistent.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting segue, because I would like to talk today about angels. I dropped it. There's our angel. There we go. You can't see them on the screen, Elena, but I'm dropping little angels, peacocks, and butterflies on there. There we go. So,
great.
There's a little quiz that allows you to find out if you are an angel, peacock, or butterfly. It's on my website. If you're in the Facebook page, you can just click on the button that says play the game. And that'll take you to the quiz, or you can go to jeanberrypresents.com and it will allow you to do the quiz.
That's so awesome. You do
Dr. Elena, of course, has kind of alluded to it, but she took the quiz and totally identified herself as one of them. So what are you?
I'm a peacock.
She's a peacock. Yeah, so we're going to take the rest off because you're a peacock. There we go. We're going to put it over your head.
Though, and somebody said this. I am gonna, and I'd be curious about this with you, Jean, because I'm gonna sense that your system, it's probably a little bit most aligned, I'm gonna say, with the Ayurvedic. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, I am. Yes, because that's a 3-part system as well.
It's a 3-part system, right? Mm-hmm. And so they talk about vatas, pittas, and kaphas. And so, and in some ways it's a little different, but from the Ayurvedic perspective, it talks about like we all have
all of them.
Parts of it. Yep. We have all of them, but then we have one that it's predominant and sort of leading of, how we go through life. And I think of this as like, these are the glasses that we wear, right? Like this is the perspective that we have and then how we engage. But it's also possible that we have other, little parts of the other pieces that in some ways we can choose or not choose to develop. And
I actually think that's really necessary, because when you're fully immersed in your type, there are actually some things that have you fall apart because you don't do those other things. And you alluded to that a little bit about intuition, because peacocks in general will tend to just put their heads down and go, right? And so in learning that, you need to wait, stop, like you said at the beginning, stop and listen, stop and listen.
Yes.
And by learning that in your own life, you're like, okay, I got this, and so it's such a natural part of your life now, that listening. And so in that way, you don't have any of as much of the shadows of a peacock showing up.
And I don't want to say that I don't ever, because I think that, it would be unrealistic to say, honestly, I mean, I get a little suspicious of people that are like, yeah, I have it all together and I know everything and, I'm always blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, like, really, like always, so I wouldn't say always, but I think that I am certainly a lot more mindful and a lot more connected, right? So one of the things I was thinking about is like, it's kind of the ups and downs of running a business and the ups and downs of running a business with the Peacock energy, right? So maybe what would be helpful if you give us kind of a little summary from your system about like what that is, and then I can kind of share a little bit of like how that's shown up in my business and my life.
Absolutely. So of course, when you take the quiz, what's going to happen is you'll find out which one you are, and then you're actually prompted to download a whole ebook that tells you all about all of these things, and so that's very helpful. In addition, and what I'm going to talk about in a minute is a master class about all of this, which really helps, that Dr. Elena and I did together, that really helps walk through all that. So this is going to be a really brief overview because in future interviews also we'll be talking to people who are angels and butterflies in their business and how they run their business that way too. And so angels, typically I call them the thinkers. They will think about all the angles of how it's going to work before they get into action. And so action is predicated on being clear and knowing where they're going. And once they've got that, wow, they're amazing. They make it go. And butterflies are more of the collaborators. If they've given an idea, they go out and they find people to bring on board with them. They're much more likely to ask the universe for support. In fact, have miracles show up because, but they're not as good at getting into action. I'm a butterfly, so just in full disclosure here.
Yeah, that's great. It's awesome.
Full disclosure. And so that is kind of the real basic overview of each one of those. And I know in some of the things that we're doing in this master class, we really get deeply into the motivations of each one and how it actually attaches to things going on in the world and shifts that are happening in the world. So you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and this is not just because we did it, I mean, I think that it could come across that way, right? Like, oh, this is really awesome and because we did this. But this, I am really, really proud of this class that you and I created and collaborated on, because I think that it is really great and it is really powerful. And it is not just because we did it, I would have that same, I would feel the same way even if somebody else had done it, right? And so I feel like it is powerful because it is kind of telling us a little bit of like, here's some of the major shifts that are happening in the world right now, which many people are feeling it. Like there's more than, we talk about 3 big ones, but there's so many more than that. And I think that we're all feeling them at this point in our lives right now. And so we talk about what are those 3 major shifts, right? And then we kind of talk about the 3 archetypes that you just described, the angels, peacocks, and butterflies, and then how those changes and shifts apply to each one of those, right? Because I think that we will get to feel them. Any kind of change that happens on the outside needs to happen on the inside first. And so we need to feel it internally for it to start happening externally, right? And then we really talk about, so then what are the 3 key actions that we need to take so that we can make these world shifts, so that we can contribute to the collective elevation of consciousness and the collective elevation of vibration and creating leaders and visionaries that have the best intention and the right energy in how they're creating their business and how they are sharing their message and that kind of thing.
And so ultimately those shifts are causing that world, by taking it on themselves, they're actually shifting that pattern in the world. Is that kind of what you're
Totally,
saying? Yeah.
totally. I mean, and I'm coming from the place, often, we get stuck into these patterns of either we're like overworking, that would be peacocks, overworking, or we get stuck in indecision or feeling really overwhelmed with all the stuff that has to get done. And so then we are unable, I call it kind of like the mole, right? When you're like in your world, you can't really deal with anything else because, like you're stressed about your own stuff, right? Like you can't come out and play. You can't come out and contribute. You can't come out, right? And so, so if you think about, we all are, what we are creating in the world is a collective of all of our collective vibrations. And so if we are in a funk, right? So if we're in our little mole hole, working really hard or like being indecisive and spinning our wheels or overwhelmed, we're kind of in this like lower vibration, like, and I think of us like in this little cloud over your head, right? And then that is also being put out into the world, right? And so it's contributing to kind of all of the craziness that starts happening in the world. And so a lot of times we feel really, we feel very disempowered when there's a lot of shifting and changing and chaos like it's happening right now. And we forget that the strongest shift that we can make starts internally. That when we can start shifting internally and we can learn how to consistently shift our vibration, that what we're putting out into the world, then it's going to be higher level vibration that is going to start shifting and changing what's happening out there, And so, so to me, it's like, yes, it's about helping, like at the personal level, like, not spin your wheels and be more certain and more assured and more trusting, and more confident and, and more relaxed and having more fun in your business. But that when you do all of those things, your vibration just naturally rises, and that what you put out into the world, then it's a ripple effect of positivity, that if we all were to do that, then, there could be massive change in a positive way. And so I don't know, like, I feel like it's really, really, really important right now because of all the stuff that's happening. Like right now, we're kind of like the frogs in the hot water, right? That don't realize that they're in the hot water and they're not jumping out, and they're like, oh, well, like, yeah, there's stuff happening. Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, oh, well, I'm just going to, and we're not really doing something. And so that, for me, part of the urgency is like, no, like, we really need to wake up. Like, we are in the hot water, and it's not going to take just a couple of us. It's going to take all of us to really, like, wake up and realize, like, we need to do something different. We need to shift how we are showing up. We need to shift our vibration. We need to shift our presence. We need to shift how we make decisions, how we show up in the world, how we collaborate with people, how we relate to others. Like all of these like ripples that go far beyond, running your business.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I am going to put the link to that masterclass. It's free. You can just click on it, sign up for a time, and watch it. It's about 2 hours long. It's going to be fabulous. And today, before we go, though, I would love to do a little intuitive exercise with everyone, and we're going to play. We're going to play the game. And so we'll draw cards today for everyone who's here. They can kind of play along with us. I'm going to put you on the spot, and you're going to play too. I know you've done this before.
Yes, of course.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this first deck, which is the angel deck, and I'm going to shuffle them, and you're just going to say stop when it's your card, okay? And it's your card is for everyone who's listening today.
Okay. Stop.
Okay. Ha! Clarity.
Clarity.
We got clarity. That's beautiful. All right. And then we'll grab our butterfly cards.
Right.
And we'll shuffle those, and you will say stop when you're ready.
Stop.
We got chakra 2, product and service creation.
Mm-hmm.
And then our peacock cards.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, you're saying
I
stop.
was tuning in. Sorry. Stop.
Okay.
I got distracted, see?
It's okay, I know. Creating.
Wow.
So, I know. So the next thing we do is we take the little journal pad and we fill in what we got. Where's my pen? It's disappeared. Oh, there it is. All right. So we got clarity, product and service creation, and creating. So we put today's date and today's day 1 for everyone not playing the game.
Right.
And so what we've done now is we've created a sentence that your brain cannot finish. And so all we're going to do is wait for an intuitive voice or feeling to finish our sentence for us. So I'm going to speak the sentence, and then you will come up with whatever shows up for you. And of course, if you're listening or watching this later, you're going to do that for yourself too. You're going to listen to the sentence, and you're simply going to listen for the end of the sentence. So here it is. I am clarity in my product and service creation. Therefore, I am creating. I am clarity in my product and service creation. Therefore, I am creating.
Powerful and engaging content for
Ooh.
our new students.
Beautiful. I love that. My pen stopped working, but that's okay. I got it. Okay, so what that is then, what that voice is that came up is exactly your mantra for today. That's just where you're going to live. That's what you're going to be. That's what you're going to do. That's where we are. But it's still not necessarily an actionable item. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that angel card, which was clarity, and we're going to be clarity. We're going to just become clarity. There's nothing in your body that's not clarity. It is clarity. And when you are clarity, what's going to happen is it's going to spark somewhere in your body. You're going to feel an expansion somewhere in your body. It's just going to show up as a little something because you are clarity. Where do you feel that?
It's funny because there's like this expansion here, but there was like this like
opening over your head. Yeah.
I felt this little like
Cool, excellent.
Yeah.
And I actually felt that really right in the sacral area for me. It was just like a spark there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that expansion and we're going to grow it. So we're just going to take that clarity, and now not only your clarity in that spot, but we're going to grow it. We're going to fill your whole body, your shoulders, your heart, your torso, your arms, your legs, your feet. In fact, we're going to pop it a little bit out of your body, and so that you're completely surrounded by clarity. And now you are clarity. There's nothing in you but clarity. And so from that place, I'm going to ask your intuition another question. In light of that, in light of being clarity, what is your key action for today? In light of being clarity, what is your key action for today?
make decisions. I'm seeing, so it's so funny because sometimes my intuition speaks to me in words, but sometimes it speaks to me in images. And so it's like what I'm seeing, it's like a sword cutting through piles.
Oh, okay.
You know, like kind of making decisions as to like what's
and then getting rid of and killing off like, things that aren't important.
You know, let's peel off what's not important. Let's like organize this in the pile that it needs to go. And it's so funny because even though I wasn't thinking of this, like you know, what's coming to me, it's our course, right? And it's looking at the outline that we have for our course, and it's basically like clarifying and making decisions of like what goes in which pile and what needs to go, that kind of thing.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So what this is then, whatever action showed up for you or for anyone else here, is that's a miracle portal. Now, I like to call it a miracle portal. You can call it an opportunity, whatever. That this is an opportunity to get a miracle. And by doing that task today, you'll get a miracle. And it'll happen tomorrow or next week or next year. But you've shifted the matrix of time and space, and that has shifted you. Now, of course, if you don't do it, nothing bad is going to happen. It just means you didn't open the portal. And another portal will open tomorrow. And so the reason I made this 100 Days of Miracles is because you actually then go to the booklet and you tally what you got. And so you tally every day for 100 days, and like we did in the beta, and you get bigger information and bigger things. And so it's pretty interesting that we all drew clarity today, because that's what this is about. Intuition is about totally getting into that clear space. So I love we drew that for everyone, because we want you to be clear about your next steps. And that's what we do in this masterclass, is walk you along that continuum. So yay!
So Jean, you're going to love this, because so yesterday I did a very impromptu Facebook Live on my just on my personal timeline. And I was, and I just decided to pull 3 cards from the Oracle. I was using the Oracle cards, and I just decided to pull 3 cards. And I thought, well, like, I'll pull 3 cards, to see like what are 3 things. I mean, what are cards that people might need to use right now, right? Like I'm pulling them for everybody, and it almost gave me chills, because the cards that came up, it was 6i, Archangel Metatron, right? Which is like, if you think about 6i, it's so much like intuition. Then the next card that came up was the yin and yang. No, it was actually rest and balance and rejuvenation, but it came up upside down, meaning, like it's going to be a busy period, and that making time for rest, rejuvenation, and in my interpretation, play will be super, super important, right? And then the last card that came up was a card that's called Woman with a Coin, which means, that if you're a woman, that means that you are probably going to be drawing more financial abundance to you. And if not, that then you might be meeting somebody that, a woman that is, a woman of worth, or that might help and facilitate more financial abundance for you. And so I thought it was like so fascinating, right? Because we had just done our challenge of playful profits, and really talked about like the major importance of having intuition and play to be able to open up portals to generate profits in our business. And then all of a sudden I pulled out these cards, and then they were like, there they were, like, and I swear I didn't handpick them. Like, that was exactly what I pulled, And so it was just sort of fascinating. And then to come today together and to kind of pull these cards that, again, are like being just so clear. It's just really cool, to just experience and just to kind of highlight how your game, one of the things that I really like about your game is that it is both tapping into our intuition, because you are asking the questions, right? Like the way that the sentences are made, like it's going to be hard to think through, right? And so it is just one way to be able to like really start really tapping and listening to our intuition. But the other piece that I really love is that the way that you created the cards, that it's focusing it on aspects that we need to do in our business, right? With actionable steps. And so I think that it's just a really, really great resource for people to be able to tap into their intuition, and you and I are going to be sharing like a whole bunch of different ways in which people will do that through the class and that kind of thing. But your game is a really fabulous resource, and so I just wanted to highlight that.
Oh, well, thank you. And yes, it is a fun thing, and I'm really excited, though, for people to pop in on that master class. and really consume that. Carve out some time because it truly is a really shifting place to be. So I would love for you to spend some time on that. I so appreciate you coming and hanging out for my first interview on Game On, how people play in their business.
Sure. No, Jean, I know that we're probably kind of a little bit on the long side, but were you wanting me to share a little bit about like kind of what are the light side and the shadow side of running a business as a peacock?
That would be awesome. I would love to from the expert, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. We kind of got sidetracked on that, but yes, I would love for you to share.
Yeah, and I just think that it's something that you and I have like really kind of drilled down, and it would be kind of cool to have that for people, because in some ways, I guess I don't know. You might have a clearer sense of this because you've been doing this quiz with people for a long time, right? But I'd be curious to know, like, what's the percentage? Like, what's the percentage of business owners that are fitting into one archetype versus another?
That is interesting. I was thinking about that the other day, and I haven't really completely tallied it out. But it seems like whenever I have a group of like 3 to 6 people, where it's perfectly evenly balanced, I almost always have 1 or 2 of each one. And so I keep thinking anecdotally, are we all just hanging out together because we know we balance each other? Or
That's interesting. I'd just be curious because I think that, so you talked about peacocks being very action oriented. And so it's so funny because as I was thinking about this morning, I thought there's a running question that I have asked my entire life, ever since I was a young woman, that has really guided many of my actions, which I think is like so representative of the peacock energy, and the question is, what would I regret more? Doing this and totally falling flat on my face, or not doing it at all? Okay? So now, and again, and this is an important question because it's not like doing it and being like awesome and succeeding, even though, peacocks are very much driven by achievement, and we like to achieve, and we like to feel good about like mastering things and doing stuff, right? But the question being like, would I regret more doing it and failing, or not doing it at all? Right? Or not having done it. And for me, the answer, I'm always going to regret more not having done it. Like, not taking action is, it's a bigger curse. Like, it feels like a bigger curse to me to not take action and to just be like, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Like, that's just, and so then, of course, like, I have taken a lot of risks and I have done a lot of things driven by that. Like, lots of people tell me you're very courageous, right? Because they see me like just taking action and doing stuff, and sometimes things don't work out so great, and that's okay, right? But that's kind of the core, question. Before I even knew anything, like, this was like, as a teenager, I was asking these questions. I'm an immigrant. I moved to the U.S. at 18. So that was the question that I asked myself, when I was like sitting there and feeling kind of terrified about it. I was like, no, I'm going to regret more not doing it. So I need to do it. Right. And so in some ways, I think that one of the greatest things about peacocks is that we take risks, that we see opportunities, and that we take action, and that we believe in taking imperfect action, and just go do it. Like, it doesn't matter. Just do it, right? Like, the Nike slogan is a perfect slogan for peacocks. It's like, just do it. Just, and that we actually get revved up. Like, we get energy in the movement. We don't get too much energy in the thinking about stuff. Like, after a while, I'm like, okay, like, let's, like, yeah, whatever. Like, let's just stop thinking. What are we going to do? Like, now my head's spinning. Now what are we going to do? Right. And as such, I think that I have, there's so much, when I'm able to tap into the wisdom of my body, because I'm a kinesthetic, you know, I find the best decisions. The shadow side of that, right? I mean, and there's all kinds of good things, right? Like, I mean, there's lots of good things. And in some ways, I would say that there's a lot of validation out in the world for running your business with peacock energy, right? Because it's a very masculine energy. It's, you know, it's very competitive, and right. So that in some ways there's a lot of validation, and there's a lot of kind of a I don't want to say like physical structures, but sort of moral, mental structures that kind of support being that way, right? And less support for the listen, like stop and listen, and you know. So again, the shadow side is actually doing too much stuff, like getting involved and doing too much stuff, and then not being able to do it. Number one. Number two is taking action on something too soon, and all of a sudden not having enough time to like put it together, or, you know, not having thought it all the way through, and then, you know, landing on your face and then being like, okay, well, that was a lot of work for nothing. So, okay, what's going to be the next step, you know? And so, I mean, so you balance it, like you balance out, because in some ways we don't get too stuck in the loops. It's like, okay, well, that was sucky. Learn a thing, put it into place, go back, you know, get back on the horse, right? So there's kind of this balance, counterbalance. But I feel like if you are a peacock, if you are kind of relating to the stuff that I'm sharing, you had said this, Jean, and I thought it was a very insightful thing. You said peacocks get injured, right? So when we're not listening to our intuition, when we're like, because we get stuck in the doing and in our heads, and then we don't listen, right? And then we get injured. And there you go. My story is like injury. I'm like, yep.
And of course, not every injury is because you're a peacock. However, it's when you see it as a pattern in your world, then yes, this is probably something worth looking at.
Totally. And so I feel like peacocks are the people that most despise meditating, because it involves sitting still, not doing anything, and listening. And therefore, I feel like one of the most important and crucial practices for peacocks is to have a daily meditation practice, because it's what's kind of starts building the muscle and the foundation to start listening to your intuition. You know, and all my clients are like, you always have a way to find it back to meditation, you know, and I'm like, it's that important.
Right. And that's, you know, I simply say a daily practice, and whatever that looks like for you, so that you can hear, like, what is that? And from the peacock's mouth, she says meditation.
I mean, and I believe in yoga and in doing any other expressive type activities, and those can be a really good pathway, like a really good entry point, you know. The idea of sitting still and like not doing anything for like 20 minutes just was like, hand me a spoon and I'll pull my eyes out, you know, like it's just, it did not feel like the thing that I would want to do. And now, you know, I meditate every morning and every evening. Like, first thing I do is meditate, last thing I do is meditate. And it's such a foundational part of me being able to stay connected to my intuition.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that is really about identifying yourself, you know, and really knowing yourself better, right? It's that one more step deeper into knowing something about what works, what doesn't work. And the great part about it is that people who come to work with us get all of that wisdom. They get all of that, you know, let's shorten the learning curve here.
Yes,
let's do that.
Like, so peacocks, we're experiential learners. That's kind of what I call ourselves. It's like, we're experiential learners. We are the ones that have the scuffed knees and, like, you know, like, oh yeah, that one time I landed on my face, and you know, like, so, you know, to be able to learn from both you and your experience and mine of like do's and don'ts, I think that it totally would like shorten that for people, right? And then be able to be like, okay, great, I don't have to go through all of the mess.
Right. Well, of course, of course. Okay. Well, and thank you again for spending a little extra time with us today on that.
Yes,
And we'll post this up on YouTube as well. And so if you come across this there, you can certainly click on that link to the master class. That will take you to that Ever webinar to watch that master class. You can also take the Angel, Peacock, and Butterfly quiz at jeanberrypresents.com and learn your archetype. The master class link is there also, so you'll be able to find it there as well. So
I'll say it because it might be a little easier.
Okay.
If you like hear it, listening. Sometimes I'm like, where are you going to drop it? And it's not here, you know. So for that masterclass is tinyurl.com /3-world-shifts. So tinyurl.com /3-world-shifts. And then if you are curious about the course that Jean and I are putting together, or if you want to know more about me, you can go to intuitivebusinessmastery.com /intuition. And so the /intuition will take you to our course page, and then, you know, you'll be able to, you take that out, then you can go to my main page. So
beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And
such a delight, Jean.
Have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye-bye.